Let me first of all thank the director of the Italian Culture Institute, Edoardo Crisafulli, for having organized this roundtable, the European Roots of Ukrainian Identity. I would also like to express my gratitude to the Ukrainian Catholic University and all distinguished speakers who have accepted our invitation. Being a diplomat and not an historian, my introductory remarks will be more focused on the current situation. Let me start by saying that in the view of the Italian government, Ukraine is a member of the European family and deserves to become as soon as a member of the European Union. Ukraine's history, compared to the Russian one, has been much more strongly shaped by the European one. When we speak about Europe, we have in mind the spirit of freedom and democracy opposed to the Asian despotism, which gradually emerged throughout the centuries. We are referring to its classical roots, to the Greek philosophy, the Roman law and statehood, the Christianity, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the gradual rise of the Europe of nationalities, the various ideologies, and the gradual secularization of the continent. All these European values have arrived and shaped Ukraine, which is therefore rightly considered a European country, being also, nevertheless, a bridge between West and East. What is also amazing is that Ukraine has been able to develop its distinctive identity, notwithstanding its long history of tragedies. I'm referring to the numberless invasions, the attempts undertaken during the period of the Tsarist Empire to Russify it, to the Holodomor, to the period of Stalinist terror, the bloodshed of the Second World War, and other tragedies. Today, Ukrainians are in the forefront in defending the fundamental European values based on the principles of freedom, pluralism, and democracy, opposed to the model of authoritarianism. I had a previous experience as a diplomat posted in Kiev from 1999 until 2002. Then I moved to Moscow from 2002 to 2006. And in January 2021, I was appointed as Italian ambassador to Ukraine. I immediately noticed that after 20 years, Ukraine has changed a lot. I was especially impressed by the strong rise of the feeling of Ukrainian national identity. I remember that during my first experience in Kiev in the late 90s, I shared the view of Huntington's book, Clash of Civilization, where he described Ukraine as a country characterized by a dividing line, a fault line on the Dnieper. At the time, the country was indeed really split in two parts, Western Ukraine looking towards Europe and Eastern Ukraine being more pro-Russian. Soon after my arrival in Kiev, I paid a visit to Odessa and Kharkiv to meet the local authorities. I immediately had the confirmation that the people in East and Southern Ukraine, although still speaking, continue to speak mainly Russian, but they now feel themselves also as Ukrainian citizens. As you know, this has been the biggest mistake of Putin, believing that the Russian-speaking Ukrainians are still Russophiles and would have therefore welcomed the Russian intervention. Ukraine has changed a lot during its 30 years of independence. You had experienced two revolutions, the Orange Revolution 2004 and then Euromaidan, the Revolution of Dignity in 2014. You strengthened your democracy, you had 6 different presidents during this period. On the contrary, Russia went backwards to the restoration of an increasing authoritarian regime based on the figure of the Tsar with the dream to re-establish the Russian Empire. Your society is today immune from Soviet nostalgia. Your people, especially the young generation, is not anymore attracted by the authoritarian model offered by Putin's Russia with its ruling elite of Silovikis, gerontocrats and kleptocrats. Young Ukrainians prefer definitely the European way of life, and a very important step in my view was the entry into force of the association and free trade agreement between the European Union and Ukraine in 2017 with the introduction of the visa-free regime. Besides, today you have Ukrainian autocephalous Orthodox Church. And your country is much more bilingual compared to 20 years ago. The traumatic events which occurred in 2014, I'm referring to Euromaidan, the annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass, have definitely separated the fate of Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine has chosen to be a democratic country while Russia has shifted to an increasing authoritarian regime. I agree with those intellectuals who affirm that the main difference between Russia and Ukraine is not given by culture, by the ethnicity, both are Slavic people, by their religion, both Russians and Ukrainians share the Orthodox faith, or the language. Most Ukrainians still do speak Russian. The real difference is represented by the choice of the political system, since Ukraine has chosen the path of pluralism, and Putin's regime cannot forgive Ukraine for its Western choice. As you know, Ukraine has a unique, fascinating multicultural identity.